Hi. Welcome to my room, I guess. Rude of you to barge in. This is so deeply awkward appearing on camera. I hate this so much. Look at this little guy. He thinks he's people. He has terrifying little long toes tapping away. I'm gonna run around and squirreled away a little bit because I just immediately am like, okay, let's try using face cam for these. Let's try having a camera, because then there's a video instead of just nothing on the screen. But the moment I try to do that, I'm like, I can't look at myself. I can't be on camera. I can't handle anything about the vlogging process. It's really remarkable if you haven't tried it before. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's different for everyone, but like, it's incredible how much you have to crush away so many anxieties and so many levels of self-consciousness to even make on-screen content, just like most of the time, but especially when it comes to this thing where it's like you're just gonna look at a camera feed of yourself in real time, all your flaws zoomed in on, which you can zoom in on specifically because you've already fixated on yourself and everything, but you also have to then have the confidence to think that anything you're talking about is worth talking about and that people care about what you're talking about, and you do that broadcast it to everyone. I have not gotten necessarily better at this. It's insane, but like I've been doing it for so long and I still have this like almost like an overwhelming shame every time I try to record anything in this style, which is the thing that I'm pushing past just as part of my job in general, but also just like elements of like I have I was going to therapy for anxiety. It didn't really amount to much. Not the best therapy I get, honestly, but like I might have it worse than normal, and I don't know. Maybe it's because I grew up more or less more socially isolated and less in the online world because it didn't really exist yet when I was a child. And maybe nowadays when kids grow up constantly having the option to present themselves and so on, and almost being told to perform as opposed to it being a weird thing that I chose to do for some reason. Oh my goodness. Maybe it just manifests super differently for different people. This isn't what I sat down to talk about, but it's turned out to be surprisingly relevant. The shower thought we're essentially following up on today is that in the last video, I was talking about the thumbnails, and I was talking about the general struggles with the channel and what it's like to have a channel that lasts this long and the kind of eras you go through and the different levels of performance and just kind of like trying to figure out how to keep the whole thing going. And one of the things that people would say every now and then is maybe it's time to consider retiring. Maybe it's just this YouTube thing isn't going to work out and it's time to move on with your life. And that's always been on the table and always been a thing that comes up. It's like the background noise of doing this ever. It's the moment you start doing YouTube, immediately no one has any faith in the idea that the thing you're doing is a real job and it's gonna go anywhere. So it's like, oh yeah, fun hobby, make a little money on the side, like an Etsy store or something. But like, you know, you've also got to do your real job, right? Which is a nightmare because doing both at the same time will kind of kill you. It's like an insane amount of stuff to put yourself through. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of normal jobs also just kind of have this background radiation of just like, yeah, but what if this job isn't forever? And what if you have to do something else? And when will that be? And there's an uncertainty there that's always been kind of scary. When COVID came around, I had the very reverse of this interaction where a huge number of people had job insecurity, and I specifically was the most secure that I've ever been in my entire life with my job because I was working from home and no one could fire me. And if anything, I was making more money because more people were watching more videos from home and so on. And that was kind of like the peak of what I've had so far in my career as far as like sheer numbers goes. It wasn't really a remarkable part of my life as far as like making anything impactful or going through any particular like era where that stuff goes on. But there's the other side of the retirement coin, which is just the idea of like being too old, which has always been part of the discussion. There's a particular bias with YouTubers where there's this idea that everybody is a certain younger age and you expect everyone to be like that. So it looks weird when anyone is older. Like, even back in the original vlog days, it stood out a little bit that, like, someone like Zay Frank seemed to be maybe a decade older than everybody else that was doing YouTube. Even someone like John Green was probably a fair bit older than, like, the, like, teenagers and 20-year-olds that you're largely seeing. And it does kind of stand out in those situations. And there's always this kind of inherent reflex to act like there's an age cap on things. And I find that interesting because as you age, you realize how absurd a lot of that stuff is, but it's like a bias that a lot of younger people have on things. And it's a bias that's self-defeating. It's weird. I had this very strange experience like a couple years ago playing Overwatch where a young child just started making fun of anyone who didn't sound like a child for the idea that they're still playing Overwatch. And it's like, I don't know if this child has thought through the fact that they're going to age and it's going to be way sooner than they think it's going to be. And they're essentially placing a time limit on their own happiness. Like, they presumably like the thing they're currently doing, right? And they want to be able to do the thing they're doing right now in the future. And that goes on to other hobbies and interests they might have, like drawing or caring about animated fiction or playing video games and so on. And it's like, here I am playing a cartoon squirrel game, and I just turned 35 this week. And that's just a thing that's happening. This is my first time appearing on camera since I just buzzed all my hair off and look like this now. Which has been a bit of a shift. I always knew I was going to be cutting my hair off at some point because my dad did a long time ago, and that's just a thing that was coming. It's part of the aging process and turning into the people that you didn't want to turn into, but also having a better understanding of them by the time you become that and so on. But yeah, I'm listening to this kid yell at people on Overwatch, and specifically really fixating on age, and I'm like, you will not be this age forever. It's self-evident, but it's also like a thing that we really struggle to grapple with as individuals because, like, we identify ourselves as who we currently are most of the time. We look like this, we sound like this, we care about these beliefs, this is our age, this is our friend group, this is where we live, and so on. And it can be really unmooring to lose that sort of anchor. Like, over time, you lose your hair, you gain different interests, you fall out with people, you realize that a lot of the stuff you believed was wrong, and you age, and I think I said that twice, actually. But you keep changing, and at some point, you're not the same person. You sort of, like, ship of Theseus and keep becoming a different person over time, and you don't really have control over that. But the idea that you should then self-enforce what kind of person you are based on your age and keep permanently closing the door on things that you cared about at certain milestones because you need to, like, act your own age correctly is ironically, not that ironically, I guess, given the perspective, is deeply immature in a way. And in a lot of these cases, we have a age bias in things, specifically because when it comes to YouTube and video games and so on, so many of these things specifically have this upswell of popularity amongst younger people that adopt it first, and then they get used to seeing young people, so they assume that it's just going to be for young people, and because older people don't get the thing, they will be dismissive of the thing, and then also further categorize it as a thing for young people, even if it's a medium full of content specifically made for adults in many cases, and so on. So what I'm landing on more and more is this idea that, like, there's not really a correct age for anything. Like, you can't really be too early or too late for, you know, most things within reason. Because it goes both ways. Like, you don't age out of your interests necessarily, unless you just specifically grow past them. But also, like, if you keep waiting to be ready for stuff, you're never going to do anything. Like, there was an era where simply because they spoke authoritatively and seemed interesting and smart, I was just used to the idea that YouTubers were all older than me growing up, and like statistically that was more likely to be the case. But as things went on, that became less and less true. Like, and nowadays, like, a lot of the video essayist type people, a lot of people I respect and look up to for their perspectives and their ways of like really breaking out a topic and making it compelling and digestible and interesting, and making a piece of art about something, even if it's often a form of critique that is itself an art form. Dan Olson and Lindsay Ellis and so on, I think those are people that are all older than me by some margin, by at least a small margin at least, and John Green and so on. But like, increasingly it's like, okay, H Bomber Guy is like 3 years younger than me, which was a little and then specifically I think more recently CJ the X and some of the other people that are breaking out are practically a decade younger than me. Increasingly, the people who I think are intellectually intimidating are people who are significantly younger than me, and there is just not like an inherent age authority to information and even perspective, even if there is perspective that comes from aging and from existing in different eras and times, which is valuable and why people should have intergenerational discussions and have connections with people that aren't just in their immediate peer group, because of how much our perspectives change over time. But like, the idea that there's a correct age to do stuff, the idea that you're going to feel like an adult at a specific time is kind of a myth, and people kind of grow up looking up to their parents and thinking that they're fundamentally different from them. And not only is that not true, but their parents are probably in many cases still deeply insecure about their own place in life and whether or not they're ready for what is ultimately just going to happen at them anyway. And a lot of life is just things happening at you, whether you were ready for them to happen or not. And it's just about coping with that and processing with who and where and what you are at the time, while you're practically like falling out of a tree and trying to catch the branches as you go. It's both freeing and very upsetting to find out that you're not going to just suddenly come together as a person the way that like a character experiences an arc in a movie. You like come out of the other side of the hero's journey and now you're complete and evolved and capable and ready at all the time. That's instead very much a self-taught, self-learned level of confidence you have to get from just actually putting in the work, and then also putting in the work to believe that you put in the work, and still working on that bit. But I look at someone like CJ the X being like a decade younger than me, and I'm like, okay, they don't not only seem way smarter than me and way more confident at that, but like they're doing stage performances. They tour and they talk to an audience on stage, like presumably alone and everything. Fucking terrifying. What are you talking about? But like, we're just people, so like there's not a fundamental difference between what they can accomplish and what I can accomplish, and that's a thing that people need to try to figure out how to process about themselves. And that's why there's not really like a too young for things. Like, you need to, if you think that you're too young for stuff, you're just gonna get passed up by people who are ready to just go do it right now. And before you know it, you're gonna be finding out that you're too old for things, because we have this like bizarrely narrow window. This was always kind of fucked me up, is that I think about how long it takes to become an adult. Like, we have a life that is extremely optimistically 100 years old, but probably not. That's just like the napkin math that my brain would always go to, is living to 100, and that seems unlikely for most people, and maybe less likely every year going by fun deregulations in things like our water quality and so on that might become a problem, and various other microplasticky, cancery type things we get to deal with. But we don't know how long we're going to be around. But what we do know is that the age that people determine to be an adult is pretty high. This is not a weird thing about age of consent or anything. I'm just saying, like, it takes a long ass time to become a supposed adult at the age of 18, and it honestly becomes takes even longer to mature past that. Like, your brain still isn't done at 18 in many cases, and it feels like you have to, like, you're really only starting to have a chance at functioning half the time, and feeling like you have things put together at like age 25 or something. And then at age 50, you're old now. Just like that. Like, that's one of the designated old ages is 50. It's like the specific line where you're not breaking down, you don't likely have these massive health concerns and so on, but you are like distinctly of an age group where you are meant to, there's like almost like an expectation to socially isolate away from all of the stuff you were doing before then. And like, upsettingly, in the optimistic time window of a 100-year life, that's only like a 25-year span between you starting the period of being a proper adult who finally has agency in life. You have to pay taxes, but you also get to like do what you want. You actually have control over your life. You choose when to go on vacation and what you eat and so on, in a way that you didn't for the first like almost 20 years of your life in many cases. You have agency both as somebody who has an income and as somebody who just like legally and socially is treated like a real person for what is essentially the first time, because for so long you are basically just like an elevated pet. Like, for the first nearly 20 years of your life, you kind of are your parents' pet. And up until then, how you grow up and how you're treated and how much you feel like a person kind of depends on how they treat you and the rights that they kind of afford you in your tiny micro society before you're loosed out into the real world. And if you think about that stuff, it's like the era where you're going to be old, optimistically, is going to be a long fucking time. Being variations of old could very well be half of your lifespan, and that messes me a little bit. And I think about that, like, I think about how to some extent we kind of expect old people to go away, and how weird that is, considering like how much of the population will be old and how long you're going to be old if you don't have something horrible and tragic happen to you before then, and how much life experience there is, and how much, like, if you grow and change so much over the course of your early years, how much you're going to grow and change over the course of the years where you're actually aging and older, when you're, and then it's weird to disregard those kinds of perspectives, knowing full well that a lot of young people are mad at old people because of the fact that, like, they're ruining the world. Like, I'm mad at old people. I'm mad about the climate. I'm mad about my treatment as a queer person. I'm mad about my rights being determined by people who are completely out of touch with most reality. I'm mad that there is currently a bill in Texas that targets people like me, specifically the furry fandom, which is just utterly bizarre, based on made-up stuff, just completely made up. They're legislating fake things, like things that have never happened, and it's like they're legislating a combination of normal child behaviors and then things that have literally never happened before, and inventing boogeymen to yell at, because yelling at an imagined story they heard about on the Joe Rogan podcast is more helpful and easy politically than actually doing anything about the larger problems in the world. And it's like reason 5,000 to respond, like, are the egg prices going to go down from this? Is this going to change anything? Or are you just distracting us with random nonsense at this point? But I'm getting off topic here and rambling. This is going to be the tone of these, though. Like, they're going to be rambles on some level, which people seem to like, but I feel bad that the moment the rubber hits the road, I'm like, I had kind of an outline in my head and we're kind of not there anymore. But yeah, like, that's kind of my advice for young people, is to not put a time limit on your happiness. Like, that's the takeaway overall, the thing that I'm kind of fixate on. It's it's very self-defeating, and it's also a form of like self-categorizing your life in a way where you're like, well, this part of my life is the years where things don't matter, and I'm gonna just not matter for a while, and so all the interests I have don't matter right now. And it's like, no, these could be your real life permanent interests. This could be the stuff that is foundational to your personality, and you're gonna have a crisis later if you think you have to let go of this stuff because it's not what like an adult should be doing based on a series of arbitrary rules, either enforced by yourself for no reason or peers and parents and things that frankly don't deserve that level of control over your life. This manifests in a very particular way with the furry fandom, and also in my own life, where I'm like, my age is fucked up. My place in life is fucked up and weird because I came out as gay 3 years ago, almost exactly. And so you have this weird element of like, I'm 35 and I'm aging up here, but I'm also like, there's this bizarre element of like what is often called queer time, which is when your life kind of starts over in a way. It's not at age 0 or anything, but like there's this weird element where you feel like you're just starting when you finally come out. If you're from generations that were more repressed and had to deal with the stuff and were less likely to just sort of not question it. Like, it is crazy that there are younger people who just come out and that's it. Like, they kind of don't come out. There's a lot of younger people that don't come out. They just literally realize at some point that they're either gay or gender nonconforming or anything else on the list of things. And then they just roll with it. And they maybe have a talk with their parents about it at some point, and that's like it, and it's like unquestioned, which is wild. It's a combination of living in a very specific era and in a very specific location in many cases, even within the United States, because there's plenty of parts of this country where people would never consider the idea of just not questioning and just doing it. But I took all the way until I was 32, and so I'm in this bizarre place where I'm like, I feel like I'm catching up. I feel like I'm behind everyone in like my development and my understanding of like a lot of queer stuff, and also just like starting to interact with people on those kinds of levels and meeting people and making a whole lot of new community. So I'm simultaneously, I feel like I'm out of time. Not like I've run out of time, but I'm displaced in time. I'm in 2 different eras of being young and old at the same time, because I'm simultaneously I feel younger than everyone around me, while in many cases being literally older than everyone around me. And it's a very bizarre displacement to have. But there's an interesting thing that happens at these furry conventions, which is that you do have like these, you do very occasionally see observably old people, like not just men, not just aged or like adults that just are like look extremely adult and so on, but like specifically you'll see like very old people very occasionally at these things, and they're often with each other, and because they're probably friends with each other and probably all know each other at this point. And in particular, if you've been on all these conventions, I think especially the West Coast ones, but some of the other ones too, there's like this like lanky fennec fox fursuiter that walks around, and he's like kind of going slow, and he's got fucking massive ears and blue shorts, and he kind of just ambles along, and he's like, you can tell from just his energy, you realize like, okay, that is definitely an elderly man inside of that suit, or elderly anything really. And that stands out specifically because of how rare it is. It's deeply interesting to me because of the fact that like it's such a collection of people in their 20s through 40s, and then you have like a tiny handful of much older people. And there's a number of reasons for that, and some of them are more upsetting than other ones. It's all over the place. One, silly animal hobby. At a certain age, you're literally significantly older to the point where you had to be middle-aged all the way back when the furry fandom started in like the early 80s, late 70s or something, because it's fucking old. The furries have been around forever. It's like you were already an adult back then and have been around this whole time, which is a long time to stick with any particular hobby and interest. Not in like a shaming kind of way, but just like it's genuinely just any kind of streak is statistically unlikely the longer it goes on. And that's always sort of wild to break down how long you would have had to commit, assuming you don't just like find the fandom at an older age, which in some cases might be less likely, the idea of committing to it that much at an older age. So when you see someone at that age, they've probably been around for decades at that point. It's like that's the first layer of the onion, the casual, who gives a shit part of just the hobby part. But then more worryingly, there's the element of like, the older you get, not literally the older you get in life biologically, but like the older of an era you're from, the more likely you are to have dealt with a lot of repression. Like queer repression, obviously, of like you'd be much less likely to be out as any kind of gay or gender. Why did I say the sentence that way? You know, being any kind of LGBT you're much less likely to be open and out about that, and because of the level of repression people are dealing with, you're much less likely to process that about yourself, and much more likely to clamp it down and force yourself to be something that you're not and live unhappily and so on. And then upsettingly, if you were open, you're much more likely to not survive. And that's the upsetting part of queerness and age, is that like so many people, there's such a resistance in aging and in living as a queer person, because there's a lot of people that don't really want you to. And so the longer you stick around, that means that you survived both people and yourself to an extent, like, because upsettingly, like elements of suicide are on the table for so many people. Like it's a disproportionate problem for a number of reasons. And most of it is pretty much just because of how society treats you and you having to live with that, and people sometimes not being able to make through that. But then it really strikes you and you realize like, oh, the reason why it's so interesting to see old queer people, and one of the reasons why it's so rare, is because there are literally fewer, not just in the way that there's fewer old people in general at certain ages, but like there's all those other issues. There's the way that people repress, the way that people hide, the way that people were less likely to ever reach the point to even self-actualize like this, let alone stick around, and then also not tragically take their own lives, not be a victim of any kind of attack or something. But most notably, we had a generation that just disappeared. Like we had that massive AIDS crisis, and that just got rid of people. Like the sheer number of people that died and the extent to which it's almost glossed over by regular society, almost as if there wasn't one of the most upsetting pandemics possible, and a huge tragedy that impacted not only the culture and the population, but also like the intergenerational bonds of an entire type of person. Like there are so few relationships between older and younger queer people, like platonic relationships, like mentorships and so on, and being able to have role models or people to look up to, or even people to have community with, is because the population was devastated. And they're just, for a long period of time, the reason why people got so used to other queer people being young wasn't just because of the repression in the past, but it was also because there were just the population booms again at a certain age, and that's who everyone is. There isn't people who have persisted all this time. That's why I really find it compelling that in the movie Luca, which people yelled at me for calling queer for some reason, even though it's just really obvious, it's a really minor thing, but like you have this whole thing where you have this queer-coded relationship with these two teenagers kind of figuring themselves out in a way that you would in any other straight story. People act weird about that, like they can't be gay, they're teenagers. I'm like, do you know how many movies I've watched about teenagers that are straight, and it's about their like your body and your minds are going to go through some changes right now, and you're going to be feeling some weird things about women or whatever. It's like, it's the same fucking thing. So it's just hypocritical and homophobic to act otherwise. I know it's not literally that, but like that's the coding I was reading into, and I had a lot of evidence for it. But what's really specifically interesting about Luca and how obviously queer-coded it is that at the end of it, there's two elder women that you realize were also sea monsters. So it's like those two were just like the people that the story was about. The story was about these two boys that are both sea monsters that are trying to exist in the regular world and keeping a part of themselves hidden and struggling with that. And at the end, it's revealed that these two old women that have been around the whole movie here and there, they were also here the whole time. And like there's a gap. Like they didn't have that intergenerational connection, but like you have that very specific scene of having those elder people reveal themselves and knowing that they've been happy and together all this time. And it's very hard not to read those two characters as being like this old lesbian couple, mainly because I don't think we have any particular evidence to contradict that. And if you just see two people happy together, coupled in a movie, that's just like shorthand for people that are in a relationship usually. And that's like, it's one of the best touches of the entire film. And I feel like no one necessarily even talks about it, but it's, and maybe I'm getting it wrong in some way because I have not rewatched that film since I made the Beastars video back in 2022 at this point. But probably will again. Frankly, I think I should just do a little detour and make a video essay about Luca, just because I think not everyone had covered everything, because back then people were more likely to make like 10-minute videos, and the conversation has evolved, and I have my own stuff to bring to the table, and there's also just been more news about it and so on over the years. And also I just have like a whole argument with the comments to be made, because people were really weird about my Luca queer analysis. And I'm like, okay, let's just prove them fucking wrong. And I could probably use a shorter project because I'm thoroughly stuck in the realm of like, how do I prove to people that I'm alive again, and so on. Anyway, this is a incoherent shower thoughts video, literally. Like I just was in the shower and was like, I think I have a thing to talk about, and what didn't quite take the form that I meant originally, but we kind of got there in the end. Just some thoughts about aging, because I'm always thinking about aging in general, but yeah, specifically I'm like, I think I have anxiety about the like appearing on camera and dealing with this, and I'm trying to launch this like weekly vlog rant thing because people seem to like this stuff and it does better than other stuff. In particular, I'm in a weird, I've said this for like a year or two, but it is true. It often feels like the worst thing I can upload to my Let's Play channel is a Let's Play, because of how much, at least when you're having an average thing. Like right now, Blueprints is doing great, but when stuff is performing on like an average level, anything I upload that's not a Let's Play will massively outperform anything that is a Let's Play, to the point where I'm like, should I be switching formats? But if I'm gonna do these, I've got to like, I ordered a webcam, this guy here, which is like, sometimes automatically follows me or something, but I don't entirely know how it works. Do not like having webcams, do not like appearing on camera. I actually tried not to appear on camera at first in my video essays. I made the Annihilation one, and I wanted to just get away with just audio, because I hate filming my own face. I don't want to edit footage that has my own face. I don't want to obsess over like whether or not I'm presentable enough and then have that all be delayed. I think that delays me just getting on the mic and just start talking and so on. There's a lot of like things that bother me there, and also just like get a lot of unwanted comments about my appearance every time I appear at any time. And it's like, some people can shrug everything off, but I'm definitely someone that like, no, I will like probably every other time I make a video that shows my face, I just gain a new thing about myself that I get to fixate on and be insecure about and worry about all the time. So it's like, because people just choose to hurt you, and that's always fun. Not always choose. Sometimes it's just like, I've learned you should never talk about anyone's appearance ever, not complimentary or negatively. And it's not about like, you can't say anything anymore because woke. It's like, you just don't know where people are in their life and what they're going through and how they're going to process this stuff and how it might fuck with them. Like how if you say someone looks great or you lost weight, and it might be because somebody had a horrible health crisis and they might be going through a thing about how people are treating them differently and better now after they nearly died of something, and how that can really fuck with them. For me, like what something comes to mind was just being at a Christmas thing and seeing my mom for the first time in like probably 6 months. This is like a decade ago or something. And she was like, "Oh, you filled out," or something like that. Like something that was like smiley, happy thought or whatever, and wasn't supposed to mean anything. But in the moment I was like, what are you talking about? Have I visibly recategorized into being fat? Is that the takeaway here? I don't remember anything else from that day. Or like when I was at a cubicle job and somebody walked in, it was my boss, and he's like, growing out the beard, yeah? And then I must have made a face, because he then after a moment said like, "Oh, you didn't like that," and he said that out loud, which is devastating to hear, because now I'm like, okay, this is the most deeply awkward thing that's ever happened, but also I don't know what I looked like or what my face did. I think I was just really confused, because in reality I was doing my cubicle job and doing my 2014 2015 part of my career on YouTube, doing this and so on. So I was just doing 2 full-time jobs. I was working all the time. So I probably just wasn't really grooming properly, and just like wasn't conscious of what level of beard I had. Like my appearance was not in a state that's intentional, which is kind of the worst thing that can happen. Like all the choices you can make are usually better than just not making a choice and not even knowing what you look like and just kind of falling apart because you're working all the time. So I think I was just deeply confused and did not know what to say, but that level of like comment like immediately just threw me, and now it's just seared in my brain forever, obviously, for having a deeply awkward interaction. But yeah, these videos are probably going to be weekly. They're probably going to be with some kind of webcam, and it'll be on and off whether or not I'm playing a game or something, or if I'm like covering something and responding to it, and then my webcam's in the corner like a commentary YouTuber or whatever. I have a few different ideas coming, and we'll see what comes from that. And I'm just gonna get used to trying to talk on camera and get used to showing up on camera and get used to ignoring the comments when people are weird about every single part of me all the time, which is a difficult thing to push through. As a follow-up on the last couple of videos, I'm not going to keep talking about like the death spiral of the channel or anything, but there was a funny turnaround where like those videos where I was just like, hey, things have been rough lately, fucking massive videos. Like the first one was almost upsettingly highly viewed. It was immediately one of the most viewed things in like months. And then the second one, which was supposed to be just like a quick follow-up, that just kind of responding to how people were commenting and so on, immediately outperformed it. I guess it was just like the go woke, go broke thumbnail was just such effective like clickbait, in that like, not clickbait as in like misleading, but clickbait as in like, I put a worm on the hook and then people get the worm. They wanted the worm. That was wild, seeing that immediately getting, like, for a while, I think it tempered off, but like it was getting like double the views of the previous video for like the first like 24 hours, to the point where it was like it was like exponentially higher than anything else on the channel. It was outperforming Omori and Blueprints. Yeah, as excited as people seem to be about those. Wild. So if these have like slightly evocative titles and thumbnails, or are slightly mysterious or something to try to get people to click, I'm just experimenting and learning and figuring out how to brand these kinds of things. Because if I just ramble on for an hour and then I just kind of like accurately and scientifically describe what I discussed, it will get viewed by like 1/10 of the amount of people that it would otherwise get viewed by. And if I do it slightly evocatively or slightly mysteriously or play the YouTube game, way more people will watch it. And that's just how it works. It's a very interesting experience. It's also why I talk about how, like, because, like, people didn't like the last video sometimes because they thought it was being too dismissive of what people think and what their responses were and what their feedback was. And it's like, it's not, it's kind of dismissive, but it's like me saying that I know more and that I can't just accept people's feedback is based on me having 14 years experience doing what I'm doing so far. Like, I have been doing this for so long that I do have something that I should trust about myself and not other people, and that's just like the truth of the situation. And that's true for anyone's job. So it's almost weird that anyone thinks that like I shouldn't be able to be the authority on what feedback means and so on. But in particular, a lot of it was just so fixated on the Yakuza thumbnail. And it was like, one, I don't expect anyone to be able to figure out how to run a YouTube channel in this situation that has never done it before. So I just don't expect anyone to have real feedback. The second video was kind of specifically about how, like, I don't expect you guys to actually have the answers here. And it only led to people digging in harder and trying to solve my channel even more, which is kind of funny. But also, so much of that video was talking about the Yakuza thumbnail and how people were fixating on that. And then people just fixated on that thumbnail even harder. I'm like, okay, guys, please, you can't just keep talking about the Yakuza thumbnail like it's the root of all my problems. It's one thumbnail for one video series. But overall, there's been some vindication there. Because we have 2 new series premieres since then, one for Blue Prince and one for Omori, and those are doing way better, both of them. On one level, I don't know if it's like algorithmic, where it's like, because people engage with the 2 videos about the channel dying, did that lead to them getting more suggestions of my videos because they looked at that and they watched it through and got engaged and pulled in by drama and then commented? Did that lead to the channel being more likely to be suggested for the next premieres? Maybe. Which would further be, once again, it not being the Yakuza thumbnail's fault anyway. But it's also like, this is the new Crimson Rabbit thumbnails, the new style I'm going for, and people kept complaining about those ones, but I'm like, okay, the games we have are Entropy Center, a game that no one has heard of, basically, that I covered years late, and then Yakuza 6, the game that came after Yakuza 0, arguably, but I played Yakuza 0 a decade ago, and then Yakuza 6 came out in 2016, and I had to play all of the games chronologically from 0 to 5 before I could get to 6. So it took me a decade to reach Yakuza 6. So I'm covering it a decade after it came out. So not only is it super old by that kind of standard, but it's also the 7th chronological game. So people see the 6th and are less likely to watch it. Every single Yakuza premiere has done worse than the previous one because it requires people to go through all that if they want to. They could just not care and watch 6 directly, but there is context. It is a narrative. There's an arc. It is a sequel. So like, people recognize that and like, oh, I should go back and watch the old ones, or they think, oh, I would need to, so I won't, and I'm not going to. One of those 2 things happens. So there's a lot of reasons not to watch Yakuza 6. So people were trying to fixate on that data so bad about why the channel was dying, and I'm like, no, those are both really bad data for thumbnails. I would not fixate on either of those. I wasn't talking about those all that much, because it just isn't a long-term data thing. It's not indicative of the health of the channel, and it's not indicative of the viability of the current thumbnail format. I just started the new thumbnails on a whim. I was like, you know what? I've been wanting to do this for a while. Let's do it right now. This is when we start. And that just happened to be the next 2 playthroughs that we're going to be airing publicly. We're going to be Entropy Center and Yakuza 6, so they got the first treatment. But it was not supposed to be like the grand opening of like, oh, here's the big blockbuster, this has to succeed, or the whole thumbnail operation will burn down. I'm like, no. But right now, Omori is doing well, and Blue Prince is doing so fucking well. So ultimately, all of the feedback about the thumbnails being so confusing and stuff is just like, no. Clearly, I can just put furries in the thumbnail in a well-composed, drawn scene, and it will be fine. Because these videos are not getting, these videos are clearly not struggling to find an audience. Particularly, Blue Prince is going to be probably the biggest series I've had since, like, Riven or something. And nothing about that thumbnail really communicates the fact that it's a puzzle game. It's just got my persona sitting mysteriously in a chair in a way that echoes a screenshot from the game. which is how most of those are made anyway. Most of them are based on either a gameplay mechanic or a visual from the game in some way. And then the logo and so on. And it's like, it's a better thumbnail than anything I could make from blueprints normally, because it's another first-person puzzle game where you're just looking at walls and stuff, so it's really hard to put stuff on the screen for a thumbnail. But it also distinctly is still the format that people were claiming is the reason is going to be bad for the channel, and it's like, well, it's doing great, so clearly the thumbnails are fine. And it's a mixed thing. First of all, every thumbnail is going to be its own project. It's always going to be me playing the game for a few hours, formulating an idea of how to visually represent that, giving the prompt to the artist interpreting that, and then whole having a turnaround, and then me probably just committing to the one thumbnail for the entire playthrough, and not having A/B testing and not having a bunch of different versions, because it costs money to commission art and time for the turnaround for the art. So it's like, enough of a commitment that's like the one that I'll do as. So like, some of them will have weaker thumbnails than other ones. Some of them will work better and some of them will work worse. That's just going to be inevitable. And that's fine, because every one of these thumbnails isn't the end of the world. It's much more impactful to worry about like the thumbnails for video essays, because those are much larger commitments and I'm much more stressed out about their performance and so on. But in an individual playthrough, they come and go in a few weeks, and we have fun with that. The format has been shifting, so my videos have been going from 2 hours long to 40 minutes long. People seem to be enjoying that change. Although every time I make any change in response to feedback, you get the people all complaining that liked their previous thing, obviously. There are definitely people who like the longer videos and wanted them to go even longer. But I do acknowledge that YouTube is not amazing at letting you pick up where you leave off on things. It doesn't have quite the Netflix functionality of always keeping track exactly where you left off in a movie and so on. So these long videos can be really awkward. And it's also hard to keep track of what video you're even in, because there's not always a dedicated continue watching a thing setting on YouTube. I know all the time I'm like in the middle of a thing on my phone and I leave it there on my phone. I'm like, I'll come back to this when I go grocery shopping tomorrow or something, and I'll be back to listening to the same video, and it'll just lose it. And then I'll be like, I definitely was in the middle of something, and I don't remember which one it was, because it wasn't that important. And so like that can be frustrating when you're trying to watch not only a 60-hour playthrough of a game, but you're trying to watch it in 2-hour chunks. It is definitely easier to watch a piece at a time. At the time, I didn't want to spam people with so many daily videos, and so that's one of the things I wanted to change. But I think it's better to deal with spamming the videos and dealing with the fact that individual videos kind of vampire each other and like can impact the success of each other, because people will fix it on that video over that video in the same day. Like those are all downsides of that format. But I think just being able to have the videos be in a somewhat consumable format again, at least, is better than that. Anyway, feel free to suggest video topics in the replies, I guess, or really just anything you want. Let me know your thoughts on all of this giant mess of everything. Yes, this is just comment farming. That's the job. You gotta do that. It's why like every single fucking video, Philip DeFranco for the last like 10 years has always been like, so what do you think about that? About every single news thing, which like sometimes was kind of tone deaf, because he does like the, do you think that or that? I'm like, Philip, this is not an issue to both sides. Every now and then he'll do that, and I'm like, no, don't act like this is a debate. This is a very fact-oriented thing, and one side is wrong, and it's often seated in bigotry. So let's not both sides. Let's not imply there's a discussion here, Philip. But he does that, and a lot of people always do that because you're prompting people to comment. Like, look for, like, if I ever prompt somebody in the middle of a video essay, which I have before, to be all like, but what about this? Like, which choice did you pick with Amicus and stuff like that, and justify that. One, like, I obviously tried to incorporate it where I'm like, well, it is an interesting thing, and I broke down why it's interesting, so it is interesting to see what other people think about this dynamic with Amicus. But also, it was me explicitly trying to get people to comment in the middle of the video essay about anything, because the comments, if you get people to comment, then you're better off. I need to consciously, whenever I'm writing anything, I should consciously find a moment to ask people to comment, or find something that's a bit of a hot take that people would likely argue about, because that's like the secret to success on this whole mess. Like, just the fact that my most popular video of all time is called Lego She Is Gay, a queer reading of Beastars, and people blow past that whole last part because they're not literate enough to know what that means. So they just see Lego She Is Gay, and they're like, doesn't he want to fuck the rabbit though? And it's like, I've read that comment every day for the last 3 years because there's a new one every day. And I'm like, on one hand, that's really annoying. But on the other hand, the fact that I stumbled into a gold mine of everyone leaving the same fucking comment every single day might be why that video has over 1 million views. It might genuinely be everyone arguing with the title makes it successful. And I'm like, it's a weird game. It's a weird game. I just want to make interesting stuff. I just want to... Here I want to do Let's Plays and comment on them and like break them down and like discuss game design and stuff and whatever comes to mind. And here I want to come up with like thoughtful topics to introduce. And then on the video essay channel, I want to really break down something and obsess over it for like 3 months and then put that out and have that be engaged with it on the face of things. But it is wild how much the success and failure of things can be determined by the thumbnail, the title, how topical it is. Does it incite certain emotions? Does it inspire people to argue? Does it... You're just like, oh man. I just like... These are logical things, but so many of them are separate from whether or not the video is good or compelling or interesting or making the world better. And that is difficult to swallow. Anyway, I need to stop myself. We're an hour in. This has been a mess. I hope this has been an acceptable experiment in format change. I might figure out better like lighting or backdrop. I actually literally have a green screen that I've had forever. Don't know where it went. I think it's still rolled up in the box I ordered it for because I was going to use that as a backdrop for a video at some point and then haven't. Not the most specific plan, just being like, this is useful to have. I'm a YouTuber. Like, you can see my you can see my DSLR, which it looks like it's floating, but it's on a camera stand. What is stand? Sounds wrong for some reason. I'm not going to worry about that. This is my cluttered mess of a room. Everything I do is in this one room. Everything I film is in this one room. It's like 12 by 15 feet. Might move this year, hoping to move this year, but I've been here since like 2018. And so the entire career of the video essay channel has been here, and most of anyone knowing me, basically. It's 28, God, 7 years, right? That's now 50% of my entire, yes, that's the most recent 7 years, and before that 7 years would be 2011. So that's fully bisecting me being on YouTube, which is weird because it feels like the most recent of like 5 eras, but it's a long time. COVID fucked up everyone's perception of time. I have to stop talking. See you guys next time. Bye.